Do you like flamers that burn so hot they scorch tanks from their tracks and flies from the sky? Well, here's an army build from the new Salamanders Codex that aims to do just that. Hello and welcome back to Auspex Tactics, the strategy-focused 40k channel, where we've been looking at the new Space Marine Codex and the new supplement books that have come out to boost them. Today we're going to be looking at another army list I've been messing around with, trying to squeeze the most we can out of the new Salamanders book. I'm not sure if this is going to be the most all-round competitive option, but it's a bit of a thought experiment in what we can achieve when you're really pushing the flamer weapon combinations to their max. I've decided to go for a Salamanders successor chapter. For this build, I've kept Master Artisans, so that's the reroll 1 hit and 1 wound per phase, but I've swapped out the second part of the Salamanders chapter trait for long-range marksman to give our flamer weapons an extra 3 inches of range, which will allow us to fill some big drop pods full of nasty flamer weapons and unleash it on an unsuspecting enemy. For once I've decided to go for a Brigade for the list, which isn't very common with Space Marines, but I believe that Salamanders, with their reroll 1 hit and 1 wound per unit, synergise particularly well with this because the multiple small units will mean that you get a lot of those rerolls over the course of the battle. This list has 9 gunline multiple small units, so that's quite a lot of rerolls per turn. We'll start with talking about the gunline. To fill out the 6 troop slots we need, we've bought 6 tactical squads, each with a missile launcher and storm bolter. The missile launchers are just so good with Master Artisans, they'll be hitting 8 out of every 9 times, and even against something as tough as a knight, they'll be wounding 3 out of every 4 times, so this will be forcing a lot of high value saves on hard targets. The bolters will be 27-inch range because of the long range marksman trait, which should help crank out a little bit more anti-infantry firepower. Also in the back line, we have 2 eliminator squads with bolt sniper rifles. These are just fantastic combined with Master Artisans, and between 2 squads of them they could easily be eliminating something like a Space Marine captain per turn, on average dice. And if there are no small characters to target, they can always turn their guns on heavy hitters, where they're actually a fairly decent, efficient source of mortal wounds against things like Imperial Knights or other heavy tanks. We have a Thunderfire cannon, aims to clear hiding units off enemy objectives, and has the option to use the Tremor Shells stratagem if we really need to slow a big scary enemy unit and keep it out of our hair. And finally we have 2 Devastator squads with las cannon and an Armorium Cherub. These essentially do exactly what the tactical squads but better. Turn 1 they'll be having 2 las cannons apiece hitting on 2s because of the signum, as the Cherub lets the las cannon fire twice. This should give us a fairly decent anti-armor alpha strike. Also aims to loiter in the backfield, ideally somewhere out of line of sight in a ruin or something. We will be putting 3 Flamestorm aggressors. These are a bit of a sleeper hit and a counter-attack unit, so if the opponent moves up scary units to threaten our gunline, they can walk out, and with one of the Salamander stratagems they'll be able to double tap those flamers on anything that's within 11-inch range of them. This gives them a 16-inch threat range for scary double tap purposes, and with combining the stratagem Flamecraft and the Fires of Battle, on average, if they get to double tap, then you could put 12 mortal wounds on any one unit. Of course this does cost 4 command points to pull off overall, but for 12 mortal wounds on average, it's really not too bad. That is why we're running a Brigade after all. I'm hoping that these guys would just be forgotten about as not a long-range threat, so the enemy might be baited into putting a unit close enough to them to get into strike range and not realise what a nasty punch these guys can provide against even heavy targets such as vehicles or tanks. Also there as a counter-attack element will be our Warlord. We're running him as a captain on a bike with a Thunderhammer and Storm Shield. With more command points, we're using the Forge Master for +2 toughness, Miraculous Constitution for a 6-up Feel No Pain and regenerating 1 wound a turn, and we're buying in the Salamander's Mantle, which will cost us an additional command point, as it's a pure Salamander's relic. And between all of those, we have a Toughness 7 -1 to wound 6-up Feel No Pain regenerating monster. Things like Assault Cannons and Star Cannons will be wounding him on 6s, and even las cannons will only be wounding him on a 4+, and also because of his Storm Shield he'll have a 3-up save against everything, and he might even shrug off some wounds with a 6-up Feel No Pain if things get through. All of these combined means that we can be a little bit more aggressive than normal with him. He can afford to go toe to toe with some very nasty heavy hitters, and have a good chance of just laughing off their damage while smashing them with his Thunderhammer in return. If no enemy heavy hitters come close, he could either stay with the gun line to provide some reroll ones, or he could go out on his own to support the 2 drop pods that we're going to be talking about, and provide some heavy hitting close combat muscle nearer to the target. So let's come on to the main focus of the list then. We have 2 enormous drop pods packed with flamers that are ready to jump out and unleash an absolute firestorm upon the opponent. Each one is made of 10 company vets, they all have combi flamers, and they all have storm shields, which puts them up to 24 points a model, so pretty pricey. But with the combos of Salamanders stratagems available to us, their damage output is going to be absolutely insane. Firstly, they'll be able to get their flamers in range due to long-range marksmen giving all of their flamers 11-inch range. This will give us 10d6 shots on the enemy. In normal circumstances, if we're looking to maximise their damage output, we'll be using Flamecraft on them for 2 CP, which will maximise the flamer shots, giving them 60 flamer hits on the turn that they drop. Ideally we'll be dropping these turn 2 and then turn 3, so we'll be in the Salamanders tactical doctrine. That will give +1 to wound for flamer type weapons and -1 AP for flamers. So now those strength 4 flamers are wounding toughness 7 vehicles on 4s and they have -1 AP to help chew through armour. We can further buff that with the absolutely awesome Salamanders stratagem, Crucible of Battle, which will give them a further +1 to wound. This means they'll be wounding anything toughness 4 on 2s and anything toughness 5 to 7 on 3s. And just to chase it down, if we're facing a really hard target, then I'd think about using Immolation Protocols for an extra 1 CP to make one of the weapons do mortal wounds every time it rolls a wound roll on a 4-up. On average that should be another 3 mortal wounds on any target. When you put that all together and you include their bolter shots, on average they will be doing around 25 wounds to Eldar flyers, so you should be able to burn 2 of them out of the sky. If you divide fire with this combo, you'll also get about 19 wounds on an Imperial Knight, so you could happily drop these guys in to finish off one that had been injured by your other heavy weapons standing at the back. And if you do happen to be fighting a horde such as Guardsmen or Orc Boys, obviously these are ridiculously effective. Each squad will be killing over 40 horde models with low saves in one shooting phase, and that's not even counting the bolters, which will also do a reasonable amount of work. So ideally these 2 squads drop in turn 2 and turn 3, so they'll be in the tactical doctrine and you can use the full combo of stratagems on each one if you need to. You might not necessarily need to use all of the stratagems each time you drop a squad in, but they're all options there if you absolutely want to maximise their damage output. If you are facing a horde and you need to clear some chaff, then there will be nothing wrong with dropping one of these squads turn 1. You wouldn't have the +1 to wound for flamer weapons or the -1 AP. But still 60 auto-hitting flamer shots should put a dent in any chaff screen and should allow your next drop pod to hopefully land and kill something more valuable that's behind all of the screening enemy infantry. We do have a couple of support characters to drop down with them. There's a lieutenant with a jump pack, combi flamer and power fist. He is there just to provide the squads with reroll 1s to wound, which will increase either of the squads' damage output by 1/6, which adds up to equal around 22 wounds on an Imperial Knight. I've also given him a combi flamer of his own so he can chip into the damage, and he's got a power fist, which is particularly handy on special characters as he'll be able to make full use of those Master Artisan rerolls. And finally, we also have a Librarian to drop in. Even with the Storm Shields, these squads are relatively fragile to return fire, because they cost so many points for not really all that many models. With the Librarian around, he will attempt to cast Drakeskin and Fire Shield on the squad that drops. So the Space Marines will then be toughness 5, -1 to hit, and also have that 3-up invul save. Either this will mean that the enemy might not be able to kill all of the squad before they fire again, or it could mean that the enemy just has to expend an enormous amount of shooting to get rid of the squad and leaves a lot of your other army elements intact. He would aim to do this for the first squad, and then jump over to wherever the next squad drops, and repeat the trick to make the next squad incredibly durable. And failing that, he always has the option of doing a few smites, and charging in to hit people with his force weapon. So that's the review of the list. It does have some positives and negatives. Firstly, you could really struggle if you can't get to any of the enemy hard targets because they've screened them out with chaff infantry. If your enemy forces to waste one of your massive punches on the screening units, then you will have a bit more of a worse time than if they are a more elite army and let you just drop in and go to town on their heavy hitters. I feel like this isn't the most durable army in the world as well, as most of them are standard tactical squad style Space Marines. and quite vulnerable to massed enemy firepower. As for positives though, we've got access to snipers, quite a lot of highly effective anti-tank weapons with the rerolls to hit and to wound, an absolute beast of a fighty character with the captain on the bike, and of course 2 enormous punches that you can hopefully target to annihilate the biggest threat to your army 2 turns in a row. As with some of my other lists, this isn't the absolutely most optimised version. It's more of a thought experiment to see what sort of things we can achieve with all of these combos available to us. If there are any ways that you think that this would be improved, please let me know down in the comments. I can't say I'm 100% sold on the attack bikes, even though the Salamanders trait does buff multi-melters. I feel it might have been better to go with some regular bike squads with bolters and storm bolter to just clear some more infantry so those pods can hit where they need to. Overall, I think this will be a fun list to play, and I wish I had as many combi flamers so I could run it. Thank you very much for listening to Auspex Tactics. Feel free to subscribe if you'd like to see more videos like this, and I'll see you guys in the next video.